Hi everyone, you might be surprised to know, but it looks like the Senate is going to come down to Montana. Yes, you heard that right. The red state that voted for Trump by double-digit margins, not once but twice, is likely going to determine Senate control in 2024. Now, why is this? Well, there's kind of a few reasons. In front of you, you can see the current map, as many political pundits and analysts would note it. It shows you all the states that are extremely likely to go Democratic, listed in blue, all those that are likely to go Republican in red. Now, all the gray states are toss-up states, or they're questionable. Perhaps the other side could win. However, in the past few months, quite a lot has actually changed. For starters, we had Republicans likely look to pick up West Virginia following Joe Manchin announcing that he will not run for re-election. Joe Manchin is a centrist Democrat, one of the last Southern Democrats who was still winning elections in West Virginia in what has become a ruby red state, formerly one of the most Democratic-leaning states in the nation, fueled by a very working class economy and population where unions were very prevalent. But now, as unions have started to shrink in size and influence, the Republicans have quickly gained control in West Virginia and have, in successive elections, continued to enhance their lead over the Democrats in the state. And it was actually one of the largest margins for Trump in the 2020 election. And if he wins and becomes the nominee in 2024, then he will likely win it with one of his largest margins yet again. So that state is now firmly in the Republicans' column, which brings us to a 48 to 41 map. However, in 2023's November elections, we actually saw a key shift in Virginia. Previously, Virginia had been a Republican state, but Democrats had been making gains and actually took control of both state legislatures and held the governor's seat, giving them a trifecta in the state. However, in 2021, Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, was victorious in Virginia, and they also were able to take half of the legislature, giving Republicans general control in Virginia. And many thought that Republicans would take over the final House of the state legislature. However, they actually failed. So they had the House and they had the governor's seat, and they were trying to take the Senate. However, they ended up not only failing to take the Senate, but they also lost the state house, meaning that Glenn Youngkin is likely not going to be the savior for Republicans in Virginia that many had thought he was. So this means Virginia is likely going to be a Democratic state again. And when you pair this with two other states, Pennsylvania and Minnesota, which also have very strong, very popular Democratic incumbents, Bob Casey in Pennsylvania and Amy Klobuchar in Minnesota, you can see that it's not actually so bad as it could look for Democrats. The map really is only 48 to 44, and you need 50 seats to get a majority. Now, this is really 50 plus 1 because you need a tiebreaker, and so whoever would win the presidential election in 2024, their vice president would break any 50-50 tie. And right now, that looks to be pretty close to Democrats' best shot. This is because in both Texas and Florida, Republicans have incumbents who are currently in states that are at least a little bit more Republican than the nation at large. Texas has not voted for a Democrat in a very long time, and Florida has seemed to trend towards Republicans in recent elections. And so, really, the Republicans can almost hope for a 50-seat baseline just heading into the next election. Now, Democrats do have a chance to hold on to the majority, however, if we say that in Michigan and Wisconsin, where Democrats look likely to keep their seats, Democrats could actually get up to 46. And in Arizona, they also look to have a good chance to win. Arizona formerly had Kirsten Sinema, a Democratic moderate turned independent, and she's running for re-election. However, her approval ratings are actually higher among Republicans than they are with Democrats, mostly because Republicans in Arizona tend to be much more establishment friendly, whereas many Democrats in Arizona are on the more progressive side of things and are supporting Democratic challenger Ruben Gallego. On the Republican side, it does look like Carrie Lake will win, and she's very popular with Republicans. However, she's not exactly the most popular with independents, who make up an extraordinarily large proportion of Arizona's voting population. And so this leads many to conclude that the Democrats at least have a slight edge in Arizona. And it's a similar situation in Nevada. While there's no independent incumbent senator running, Democrats have a similar advantage among independents. And while the state has seemed to slightly trend Republican, as Latino voters have trended Republican as well, it doesn't look to be enough to save any Republican. In addition, the Republican primary in Nevada has been extremely competitive and has not exactly been helping Republicans take the seat from Democrats, and it's not looking likely at all. Which brings us down to two: Ohio and Montana. These are two seats where there are Democratic incumbents in at least lean red, if not ruby red states in Montana and Ohio. Now, there are two reasons why Montana is much more unsafe for Democrats. On the one hand, in Ohio, there was a high-profile abortion referendum where Democrats won, and following this, Republicans have tried to block the referendum's results, and they've argued that certain parts of the referendum are either A, incompatible with other parts of the Constitution, or B, they just will not exactly follow them, and they'll try and make their own interpretation of what the referendum said. These actions haven't exactly been popular in Ohio. Furthermore, the incumbent Republican governor, who was quite popular, actually was on the opposing side of this referendum, the side that lost, and it's kind of dented his popularity. Republicans in Ohio just aren't as popular as they were 2 years ago. And this makes one think that, well, Ohio could potentially go for the Democrats. It's not assured, but it is at least possible. Which brings us to Montana. Unlike Ohio, Montana has actually had a decently Republican voting history at the federal level. It's been Republican since far before 2008, which is one of the last times where Ohio voted in large numbers for a Democrat. And even in 2012, Ohio was still voting for a Democrat senator. It was voting for Democratic President Barack Obama. And Montana both times chose not to. And Montana has only had one Democrat left, the last man standing, essentially, just like Joe Manchin was in West Virginia. His name is Jon Tester, and he actually has never really won a convincing majority. In fact, he's only won a majority once, despite having won 3 elections to the Senate. In the first 2 elections, there was a decently strong third-party performance by libertarians, who generally were Republican-leaning voters who considered themselves not in line with the more socially conservative positions that the Republican nominees had adopted. And in Montana, which continues to be a decently libertarian state, Montanans technically would consider themselves at least socially moderate, but they are strongly economically conservative. Their attitude towards the government is best summed up as "get out of here," and Montana continues to try and find personable people. And one of those who they found was Jon Tester, who managed to sneak through and win not 1, not 2, but 3 elections in the state. With 2 non-majorities and just 1 slight majority in the blue wave year of 2018, it's highly likely that Republicans could flip the state. And Republicans, unlike elsewhere such as Ohio or Nevada, seem to have unified behind a challenger in Tim Sheehy. Sheehy usually would be considered by most as from usually the center-right section of the party. And while Matt Rosendale, who lost to Tester in 2018, probably will attempt to run in a primary, he doesn't seem to have much support. For the one part, he's not very popular among Montanan Republicans, having lost them in the election in 2018, what was considered by many to be one of the most winnable pickups for Republicans that cycle. And on the other hand, his socially conservative positions have put him at odds with his libertarian-leaning potential constituents. Therefore, it's almost easy to conclude that Montana is likely to be the tipping point state. Now, if Republicans were to win the presidency and therefore the vice presidency and hold the tying vote or the tipping point vote through the vice president, they would actually just need this map, in which case Florida or Texas would end up being a toss-up state. However, in the case of a Biden re-election victory with Kamala Harris continuing to break ties in the Senate, it looks like it will in fact all come down to Montana. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.